to be invested in infrastructure within the tiger's range over the next decade. That's staggering. It's also an opportunity. If we can create mechanisms to transfer some of those resources, the annual revenues that are being generated by dams, by roads, by other forms of infrastructure, back to paying the recurrent costs of tiger conservation, we can solve the most critical problem, which is that we're able to conserve tigers. We know how to do it, and we have episodes of recovery across their range. What we fail miserably at is sustaining that. And part of that is that we get going, we fund something for a few years, the resources run out, and tigers are poached again or they're prey, and the numbers decline. So we have to find those mechanisms to sustain it. But I'm really convinced now that we're on the road to doing that, and that we just need to accelerate our pace and to gather more political will to create these financing mechanisms, and I think tigers will take care of themselves. They're simply big cats. They breed like crazy. If we just give them enough room to roam, we'll have 7,000 tigers in 2022. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eric. Stephen?
Well, he's getting that the PowerPoint ready. I just wanted to join my colleagues in thanking the partners who are here today and those who aren't here. I would just reflect back, it wasn't about a year and a half ago, John Seidensticker, who's on my team, introduced me to Keshav Varma. And we engaged in a conversation, and ultimately Keshav said that he should have the president, Zelik, should come out to the Conservation and Research Center in Front Royal and for a tour. And so by some stroke of luck, he agreed to come out, and it was on Halloween night, 2 Halloweens ago, and he and his wife spent the night in one of our old houses and listened to the maned wolves howling in the background, and went out for a nice dinner. And the next day they had a tour, and they were supposed to, their program was that they had to leave by 1. They didn't have time for lunch. They were really busy, and it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon when they finally were pulled away and left. And that was on a Saturday. And the following Monday, he had a meeting with many of his vice presidents and announced that he wanted to mainstream conservation into biodiversity and biodiversity into development practice. And this was kind of a, I think, probably a shocking thing. Okay, this was a bit of a shocking thing, I'm sure, for people to hear. It was music to my ears, though, to know that you had a leader who had the vision to think about how partnerships with 2 great knowledge institutions, the Smithsonian and the World Bank, might come together and build on each other's strengths. And so it's been a whirlwind courtship and marriage, but it's resulted, I think, in some really good ideas that are emerging from this. And the one thing that I think we share, in addition to the knowledge, is the understanding that it's really the problems we're dealing with are transgenerational. They'll be here forever and ever. We'll be managing tigers and carbon and everything else for as long as there are people on the planet. And the only way that we're going to actually impact the change or to stem the tide or to do whatever is to have people in place who have the passion, but also the knowledge and the understanding to make a difference. And so that's sort of a core element when you ask people. We do a lot of training over the years, and we ask people, if you ask a young person who's 20 and you go around the table and you say, what's your dream and why are you here? Almost all of them will say something to the effect that I want my life to have meaning, I want to make a difference, I want to have an impact. And I think we can share that across all sectors of society, whether you're in business or banking or in conservation. I think that's something that we've been able to tap into right now. I have to beg one little thing with Eric's comment about tigers. Based on the number of cameras I saw the other day when Taishan was announced that he was leaving, I've never seen that many cameras in my life for tigers yet, but maybe in Vladivostok we'll see them. So we came together, and what we basically tried to come up with was a concept of partnership that would be different than training that's been done before. And we came up with this concept of a long-term goal of a conservation development practice network. And so you can read what it is, but basically it's a distributed network of people who will work together to sustain, to share knowledge and skill sets and support one another over the long haul to affect tiger conservation, whether it's at the policy level or it's at the practitioner level. So it's a simple concept, and We come up with that concept because there's training everywhere. Everyone does training courses, and the problem is that there's very little follow-up with training. We don't empower people to use the tools that they've just learned, and so we go away, the training sits unused, and that's a problem. Ulas Karant, who some of you might know, shared with me a book when we were at Kathmandu, and in the introduction he quotes a passage is quoted where he talks about how in 1983 he came to the Smithsonian, to the Conservation and Research Center, and he had been a farmer and an engineer, and he had no experience, and he met a Smithsonian scientist, Rudy Rudran, while he was at a conference in India, and Rudy offered to have him come to a course if he could make the merit, if he was good enough, and he'd find the money for him. So he applied, and he was good enough, and the money was there, and he came to Front Royal. And now, some 25 years later, he's a recipient of the Getty Prize, and he's recognized as being the foremost tiger expert amongst the giants in the field. So the power of training is there, but somehow we dropped the ball along the way, and we didn't keep the continuum going. And so our dream is to resurrect that type of energy and to create something that's truly sustainable. So in Kathmandu, some of the priority actions that are relevant to capacity building are mentioned here. There was a strong emphasis on protected area management and capacity development. Also, there was recognition that we needed to also work at training at higher levels as well. These are just the broad goals that are listed in there. So what we've been doing for quite some time now with the World Bank Institute is doing some stakeholder engagement and to try to do needs assessments leading up to developing our pilot courses, which will begin this coming year. And so we've at the Kathmandu meeting, we had a breakout session, and these are some of the things I'm sure that you would predict that they would say. Not enough resources, not enough collaboration, not enough vision, etc. Too much bureaucracy, basically lack of jobs to do once you've been trained, lack of people to provide the adequate training. And then what are the essential elements of developing a network? Well, quality dedicated trainers, I would sort of also say inspirational trainers, of things that are practical, long-term follow-up, and making sure that we have the right people selected for training. And this is one of those things that we heard again and again and again, that there's been too many times when money becomes available for training, we end up picking the wrong people. So the idea is to also bring communities and protection activities into the equation. So the questions that we've been asking as we've been going through this whole exercise is, how will our new capacity initiative bring about the needed changes over time? How will we position ourselves to avoid the mistakes of the past? And how can we stimulate leadership to reposition institutions towards more progressive approaches? So the idea is to constantly be asking ourselves, what are we doing that hasn't been done before or that can make up for the mistakes? And so our guiding principles are listed here, and some of them are a little bit repetitive. They were contained in the white paper that we presented at Kathmandu. But collaboration, working across sectors. It was pointed out very clearly at the meeting that one thing we can count on, like the sun rising, is that development will happen. And we need to be working across sectors to make sure that it happens in a way that's reasonable, that's smart, and that we have people that are trained, that know how to work across sectors to make the proper kinds of planning and decisions as appropriate. We want things that are on the ground. We want it to be sustainable. And this is probably the most important point that we believe the network represents, and that is something that's sustainable, that has peer-to-peer kind of programming. It has mentoring. It has follow-up. It provides resources, at least in the midterm, to get programs started. So again, following up more of these things, socioeconomic development programs incorporated, community aspects, economic development, human-wildlife conflict. Those are all things that we feel that are important. So also recognizing that different countries have different issues and problems. One size doesn't fit all. And also that we have goals that are measurable and we can quantify our success at the end. So the idea is we have next year in this pilot phase, we'll be launching 2 programs, and we hope to pick up a third shortly after that, but we'll be doing a training of the trainers program that will start this coming spring, and it'll be taught mostly in India, the Wildlife Institute of India, with follow-up programming being done here in the States for a shorter interval of time. The selection process includes around 25 students from 4 different countries, and so we will be